The house is loud, even when it's silent. It's a specific kind of silence, not the peaceful kind that comes after a long day, but the heavy, pressurized silence that comes before a storm. You're small, maybe 5 or 6 years old, and you've already become a master of acoustics. You know how to decode the specific heavy weight of a sigh coming from the kitchen. You know the difference between a cabinet being closed and a cabinet being slammed. You've learned to read the jagged, metallic edge of a front door closing just a little too hard. Most kids your age are learning their ABCs. You are learning the frequency of your parents' footsteps to gauge if it's safe to come out of your room. You didn't have the words for it then, but something ancient and biological clicked in your mind. You looked at the adults who were supposed to be your pillars, and you saw them crumbling, maybe under the weight of addiction or the heat of a rage they couldn't control, or just the hollow, frozen absence of a soul too broken to show up. In that moment, your survival instinct made a choice for you. It made a silent vow: I have to hold this family together because no one else will. So you became the one who doesn't break. You became the one who doesn't need anything so that they could have everything they needed just to survive. This is the exact moment the child disappears. You didn't physically leave, you just retreated deep inside and sent a representative out in your place. You learned to smile more and cry less. You learned to read the room before you even took a breath. You became the emotional thermostat of the entire household, constantly adjusting yourself, shrinking your needs, and muting your voice to keep the temperature from reaching a boiling point. You weren't a child anymore. You were an architect, carefully building a world of safety out of thin air, using your own innocence as the foundation. And the most tragic part? The world gave you a gold star for it. The teachers, the relatives, the neighbors, they all looked at your quietness and your responsibility, and they called you so mature. They called you an old soul. They told your parents how lucky they were to have such an independent child. But they weren't seeing your soul. They were seeing your survival tactic. They were praising the fact that you had learned how to be invisible. They were thanking you for making their lives easier while you were quietly drowning underneath the weight of it all. This is the wound that no one sees, the injury with no visible scar, and it's been running your life ever since. Here's what happens to a child's brain when they're forced into adult roles too early. Your threat detection system goes into overdrive. You become a scanner, always reading the room, always anticipating needs, always on alert for the next emotional crisis you'll need to manage. Psychologists call this hypervigilance, but it feels like never being able to fully relax, like waiting for the other shoe to drop, like being on call 24/7 for emergencies that haven't happened yet. Your sense of self becomes conditional. You learn that you're valuable when you're useful, lovable when you're low maintenance, safe when you're performing. So you develop what looks like maturity, but is actually a coping mechanism, a finely tuned radar for what others need, and a complete disconnect from what you need. Your nervous system gets stuck in survival mode. Even when the crisis is over, even when you're safe, your body hasn't gotten the memo. Rest feels wrong. Stillness feels dangerous. Saying no feels like emotional suicide. The technical term for this pattern is emotional parentification, when a child becomes the emotional caretaker of their household. But that clinical language doesn't capture what it actually feels like wearing a costume you can't take off, like being praised for drowning quietly. Let's talk about what this looks like now, today, in your real life. You're the friend everyone calls in a crisis, but you don't know who to call when you're the one struggling. You've become so good at holding space for others that you've forgotten you need space too. And when someone does offer help, you deflect so automatically you don't even notice you're doing it. You apologize constantly for taking space, for having opinions, for existing in ways that might inconvenience someone else. Sorry, can I just? Sorry to bother you. Sorry, one more thing. You're apologizing for being human. You feel guilty for resting. Time off feels like laziness. Pleasure feels selfish. The only way you can justify taking care of yourself is if you've already taken care of everyone else first. And since that job is never done, neither is your exhaustion. You're attracted to people who need fixing, not because you have a savior complex, but because that's the only kind of love that feels familiar. Relationships where you give 80% and receive 20%, where you are the emotional manager, the problem solver, the one who doesn't need much. You feel like a fraud. Everyone thinks you're so together, so capable, so strong, and you are because you had to be. But underneath that competence is a child who just wanted someone else to be the adult for once. And the distance between who you appear to be and how you actually feel is exhausting. But here's the part that might surprise you. Stillness feels like a threat. Most people crave peace, but for you, peace is terrifying. Why? Because in your childhood home, silence was the calm before the storm. It was the sound of a fuse burning. Stillness meant you needed to be even more alert, not less. This is why even now, when things are going too well in your life, your job is stable, your partner is kind, everything seems calm, you might find yourself picking a fight or creating an emergency. That isn't self-sabotage, it's your nervous system trying to return to its baseline of chaos. You feel safer in a crisis because you know how to survive a crisis. You were trained for it. Crisis mode is familiar territory. You know exactly what to do, how to be, who to become. You're the most competent version of yourself when everything is falling apart. But you weren't trained for rest. You weren't trained for joy without waiting for the other shoe to drop. You weren't trained for receiving without calculating the debt you'll owe later. This is why you're a giver who can't receive. When someone helps you, offers support, gives you a gift, your brain immediately asks, what is this going to cost me later? Because in your world, nothing was free. Love came with conditions, help came with strings, safety came at the price of your own needs. So you stay in motion, you stay useful, you stay one step ahead of vulnerability, because stopping means feeling, and feeling means remembering, and remembering means acknowledging that you were never supposed to carry all of this alone. So here's what we don't talk about enough: the cost of appearing fine when you're not. That child who learned to be responsible too early, they paid a price, and you're still paying it. They paid with childhood itself, the freedom to be messy, irrational, needy, silly, the permission to not have it together, the safety to be protected instead of protective. Authentic relationships. When you learn early that showing your real self is dangerous, you develop a performance self instead. And that performance self is who you show the world, even to people you love. So your relationships have intimacy, but not the deepest kind, because they know the capable you, not the vulnerable you. The access to your own feelings. When your job was to regulate everyone else's emotions, you learned to override your own. Now you genuinely can't tell if you're angry or just fine, if you're sad or just tired, if you're hurt or just sensitive. The ability to receive. Help feels like weakness, gifts feel like debt, compliments feel like lies, because somewhere deep down you still believe you're only valuable when you're giving, not receiving. The tragedy is this: you developed these patterns to survive. They were intelligent adaptations to an impossible situation. You weren't weak, you were brilliant. But what saved you then is suffocating you now. So why am I telling you all this? Because you can't heal what you won't acknowledge. For years, maybe decades, you've been telling yourself stories. It wasn't that bad. Other people had it worse. I turned out okay. And maybe those things are even true, but they're also a way of dismissing your own experience, of minimizing what actually happened, of staying loyal to the people who needed you to be fine, instead of being honest about what you needed. Here's what I want you to understand. Your wound is valid even if your childhood looked fine from the outside. Trauma isn't just what happens to you, it's also what doesn't happen. The attunement you didn't receive, the protection you didn't get, the childhood you didn't have. You can come from a good family and still have been emotionally neglected. You can have parents who loved you and still have been parentified. You can have nothing to complain about and still be carrying unprocessed pain. The wound is real, even if no one else sees it, even if you've spent your whole life pretending it doesn't exist. So here's where we start, with seeing, not fixing, not changing, just seeing clearly what actually happened. I want you to do something this week, and it might feel uncomfortable. Find a photo of yourself as a child, somewhere between ages 5 to 10 ideally, one where you can see your eyes clearly. Put that photo somewhere you'll encounter it every day, your bathroom mirror, your desk, your phone wallpaper, somewhere unavoidable. And every time you see it, I want you to pause for just 5 seconds. Look into that child's eyes and ask one question. What did you need that you didn't get? Don't analyze. Don't justify. Don't explain why you didn't get it. Just listen. You might hear, I needed someone to notice I was struggling. I needed it to be okay to not be okay. I needed someone else to be the adult. Whatever comes up, write it down. No judgment, no dismissal, just witness it. Because here's what's actually happening. You're beginning a conversation with the part of you that's been silent for decades. That child in the photo is still inside you, still carrying the weight of responsibilities they never should have had. That child inside you has been waiting so patiently for someone to finally ask how they're doing. And that someone is you. This is just the beginning. In the next video, we're going to talk about how to reconnect with that inner child. But for now, just find that photo, look into those eyes, and begin to listen.